Hi guys, good morning. My name is Alex and I'm here with Jason Merkel, and today we're going to talk to you about the brand new E-flite Viper jet. Now we're doing something kind of different here today because this actually started shipping yesterday when we announced it. So we're going to do a live unboxing and setting up the radio. So let's crack the box open and get it started.
Yeah, so like Alex said, we actually did have a very limited supply of these available yesterday. So there's a bunch that are shipping out on their way to stores now. So if you have a favorite local hobby shop, check with them. They might already have some coming in this weekend. Check with your favorite online retailer. HorizonHobby.com did sell out of these. That said, as I'm talking right now on TowerHobbies.com, there are a few left. So if you want to get one right now, get your hands on one and not have to wait a couple more weeks till the second shipment gets here, go to TowerHobbies.com, search for the Viper, E-flite Viper, Viper 70mm, Viper EDF, and you will find it there, and you can actually buy it. Just the bind and fly basic version. The PNP version was not available yet, but the bind and fly basic version, which is the version I think most everybody wants, is readily available again right now at TowerHobbies.com. Get it while you can. So this one actually, from that shipment, and we pulled this out because we wanted to be able to do a bit of an unboxing. And the reason that we're doing an unboxing video is, don't worry, you're not going to be here for an hour and a half watching this Facebook Live. One of the most attractive points of this Viper is how quickly it goes together. But before we show you that, we'll talk about some of the really good points of this product. And the first and foremost is the fact that we truly believe this is the best first EDF that you can get right now.
And why is that? What we think of? There's
it's a combination of reasons. Yeah, exactly. We don't just say, oh, this particular one because we put Safe Select in it, that makes it the best trainer jet. That's not necessarily the case. You know, there's a lot of variations in jets in particular and electric ducted fans, the amount of performance that they offer, how hard they are to land, how durable the landing gear is. When you consider all of those variables, we think the Viper is exactly what most people need. So we've got the Viper jet design, the full-scale design. It was intended to be a bit of a sporty version of a jet that more pilots could fly successfully in the full-scale world. Well, the same applies in the model world. As a subject matter, as a model, it flies really, really well inherently. So it's got a larger than typical jet wing. You've got a little bit more span, a little bit more wing area in general, good size control surfaces, wide-spaced landing gear, and then in this case, this particular Viper, we don't have oleo struts on it. We've got sprung wire struts. A couple guys have been like, oh, I wish it had better gear. That is the best gear for taking off and landing on rough surfaces, and also it's a lot more durable, so you're not going to be busting hinge pins loose and potentially damaging springs and things like that. You know, wire strut gear is phenomenal. It's durable. It's simple. It may not be the most attractive looking. I won't disagree with that, but it's still a great gear. So the combination of the Viper airframe, what I think is great, well-suited gear for not maybe the best landings or landings on not the smoothest surfaces and take us on the smoothest surfaces, I still think it's a good overall product. In addition to that is the performance that it has. It has tons and tons of power. So unlike some jets that might have just enough power to get up on step and fly, you've got excess power here. So you can punch the thing and go vertical. If you get into trouble, you can punch it. You've got better than average throttle response.
So guys that actually fly big jets, they can fly this and still have a lot of fun with
it. And a guy who's flown turbine jets or other EDF jets, they're going to also love this. The performance from this thing, it's got a 70mm 12-blade fan. It's not like the old 3-blade, 4-blade, 5-blade, even 6-blade fans we had back in the day that sounded like a blow dryer. The beauty of the 12-blade fan is you've got more thrust, more speed, and a turbine-like sound. So I really, really love that. Also, this power system is set up to be 6S compatible. So a lot of 70mm fan setups are 4S, some 3S, some 4S, maybe even some 5S. This one is 6S right out of the box. The beauty of that is we're able to get more efficient power. We get a little bit more flight time on a given capacity of battery versus, say, a 4-cell setup. We're pulling less amps to do the same amount of watts, that kind of thing.
So the flight time, I know that some of the other jets like 3 or 4 minutes. Can you get a little bit more on this?
Yeah, in this case, if you use a lower capacity battery, like you could go down to, say, a 6S 2700 and fly it, and you might only get 3 minutes. We recommend a 6S 3200 up to, say, a 4000. I don't think bigger batteries will fit without doing a lot of carving of the foam or making the thing very nose heavy, so we don't necessarily recommend that. But if you fly with the 3200, you're going to get a solid 4 to 5 minute flight time. You fly with a 4000, you're going to get 5, 6, even more minutes of flight time. So it's not on the low end of an EDF's flight time spectrum. It's on the higher end. Again, part of that is the 6S power system, the efficiency of the 12-blade 70mm fan, and so I think that's a great combination of things. So again, you've got a good air airframe, good landing gear, great power system. A power system that's going to keep even the most experienced guy happy. I mean, you're talking 3-digit speeds in a dive, level flight, no problem. And then you've got, it slows way down. That's the other thing I want to point out. This has flaps on it out of the box.
Right.
It comes with the flaps installed. You don't have to add them as an option. We'll talk about those in a little bit more detail when we show you putting it together. But one thing I want to point out really quick before we get too far is some people have said, hey, isn't this a such and such jet? Just with a different trim scheme and you know, with flaps and with now AS3X and Safe Select. Yeah, it is. It's that airplane. And so we're not hiding that fact. We were so impressed by the way that airplane flew. We said, you know what? This jet with AS3X and Safe is going to be one of the best EDFs that you can get in this category, and it's going to be one of the best first EDFs that a person can buy. So we took that, we put flaps on it out of the box because we wanted people to have shorter takeoffs and landings, slower takeoffs and landings. We wanted to have better slow speed performance options. I think it's a better setup, especially for an entry-level guy, but even for an experienced guy having flaps, you just want those. So we've got the flaps on it out of the box, and so again, same airplane, but in my opinion, I think it's better looking. I really like this trim scheme. Of course, looks are very subjective, but this is actually a trim scheme that was designed for us by Aircraft Studio Design, and I believe Ali had this trim scheme on a larger Viper jet. And it's kind of a fantasy scheme. It is not a scale scheme. Yes, there's a red star in there. That doesn't mean anything other than it just looked kind of cool. It popped out and it looked good. It's got digital camo on the bottom, and what's really nice about that is you've got good visibility top to bottom. When we pull the airplane out of the box and show you, you see a lot of white on top, a lot of the digital camo on the bottom, so it's really easy to tell top from bottom. I really like that.
So if I fly, let's talk about the audience. Who's the target customer for this? So let's say I fly, you know, park flyers, maybe something like a 6-channel P-51 Mustang. Can I fly this?
Well, let me start out by saying it is not for a beginner.
Truly beginner.
It is not a first radio-controlled airplane. I know a lot of people are like, man, I want to start with a jet. Yeah, I understand that, but jets are still not the best choice of aircraft for a first RC aircraft model. But if you have flown a few airplanes successfully, let's say you started with a Mini Apprentice or Sport Cub S, a trainer that we offer, and you've successfully learned to fly that and moved into a second airplane. You've got a low-wing airplane, maybe a T-28, maybe you're flying you know, a Park Zone Crescendo or, you know, a second-step airplane, and you've mastered that, and now you're like, yeah, I really want to fly a jet. I would say you're potentially ready for it, especially in the Bind and Fly basic version with AS3X and then Safe Select optional. I think you're ready to fly this potentially as your third airplane. Now, taking off and landing a jet is different than taking off and landing a trainer and even a second style airplane. If you've flown like Warbirds, if you've flown some higher performance stuff, like let's say you can fly a V900, a high performance, high speed airplane, you're going to have zero problems flying this airplane. So if you've never flown a jet before, this is for you if you have some experience already. If you're a high-end jet guy like Ali Machinchi or David Payne or Dustin Boucher, these guys, they love giant scale turbine aircraft. They all are completely enamored by this thing. They are flying the pants off of it. Actually, part of the reason that we have one in the box is because the guys took them all to Iowa for a jet event because they can't wait to show off how great this little EDF is.
And it's because of the performance envelope. You know, go fast, go slow, and all that stuff.
Go fast, go slow. You can bank and yank on this thing, and it doesn't snap. It doesn't do anything weird. It's so smooth with AS3X now. It's got such good vertical, such good power, decent flight times. I think everybody, even at that highest end, is very impressed. And everybody in between, it's going to be for you. And I know it's cliche, right? This thing appeals to pretty much everyone. But I think that's the truth here, is that this is a great product. It is such a phenomenal airplane. It's a perfect first jet, and it's also a very, very good choice if you're an experienced jet pilot as well.
Awesome, awesome. So let's talk about Safe Select. I see a lot of people say, oh, I don't like the Safe. I don't want it on my airplane. But the fact is it is optional.
It is optional. You don't have to use it. So if you bind it normally, if you buy the Bind and Fly basic version and you just put the bind plug in and you bind it like you normally do bind a Spectrum receiver, you get AS3X only. You don't get Safe Select. However, and we're going to show you this in the video, if you take the bind plug out before you turn the transmitter on to bind it, then you get Safe Select. Then Safe Select is going to be on a switch. We have to assign that switch, and then we can turn it on and off. And then there's a small caveat with that. We found something that we've found across some other airplanes now, and it's something that we're going to work on fixing in the future. But I'm going to show you guys how you can still bind with Safe Select and then actually deactivate it.
Awesome.
So we're going to talk about that here in a little bit more detail. But basically, again, you don't have to use Safe Select. We don't want everyone to have to use Safe. If you want Safe, you have it. That's why it's Safe Select. If you don't want it, you don't have to use it. Or you can always, like what I do as an experienced pilot who's been flying a long time, I don't need Safe.
Right.
But I see sometimes there's benefits to having Safe on my airplane. So for example, bugs are flying in my face and I need a minute to flip on Safe, I can get the bugs out of my face and the plane stays nice and level for me, and then I can go back to flying it comfortably. Maybe a guy's standing next to me, he's like, man, I'd really like to try that thing, but I don't know if I can handle it. No problem. Flip on Safe, hand him the transmitter.
Awesome.
I don't even have to have a buddy box to get him in the air. So I think that there's a lot of tangible benefits of Safe, even for an experienced pilot. And of course, for an inexperienced pilot, it's phenomenal. In this case, if you're trying to do like a landing in crosswinds, or let's just say it's your first jet and you're just trying to do your first landings, turn Safe on. It will keep the wings level for you. And for those that don't know what Safe does, when you have it active, you have pitch and bank angle limits, so you can't bank too far and you can't pitch too far. And then it also has self-leveling when you let go of the stick. The beauty of that is it makes it really easy for a takeoff. You can do, wings are going to stay locked in a level, especially if you're taking off crosswind. If you are landing crosswind, it really helps. Even just your first landings, you don't have to worry about keeping the wings level. You basically just keep the airplane level. Or you manage the attitude with throttle and elevator, and you bring that thing into a nice, easy landing. It's super simple. It doesn't get much better than that. So Safe Select is a great, great feature for the lower time pilot, the less experienced pilot, the less confident pilot, and even for an experienced pilot, you can still do good things with it.
Awesome. So I have a comment here. It says from Jojo, open the box. Are we ready?
Oh, yeah, we're ready to open the box.
Let's
So
do it.
I want to show you guys how few parts there are to this airplane, and that there is basically only one tool that you need to put this together. And the one tool that you need is a 1.5mm driver. So I've got here an E-flite 1.5mm hex wrench. That's basically all we're going to need to put this together. Of course, I've got my transmitter, I've got a battery, I've got an adapter here because we're going to talk about the difference in connectors.
Right.
And that's it. All the screws in this airplane are the same. They're nice hex head, really good stainless steel screws. And so this is it, guys. You can see how it comes out of the box. There's not a lot of major parts to it at all. That's that digital camo I was talking about.
Yeah.
You can see how cool
amazing.
that looks.
Yeah.
That's the bottom of the airplane. We've got the retracts already installed here. We've got flaps are already installed. The servos are there. We've got digital metal geared servos all around. We've got ball link linkages all around. This thing is super precise, great control, crisp response all the time when you're flying it. And so unboxing it is very simple. Basically, we cut the tape there. We pop those out, and boom, there's the wing. The wing is already basically one piece. You can see there's the trim scheme on top. You can see the difference between top and bottom. I think it's very clear.
It is very nice.
It's about as clear as it can get.
Yeah.
And then you've got all the wires routed up here to the top. Again, we've got flaps installed. We've got ailerons on it. We've got servos for each of those, and the electric retracts already mounted in there. Wing comes out nice one-piece assembly.
One-piece wing, yeah.
We've got the horizontal stab here. Digital camo on the bottom, of course, with a servo for each elevator half. And then we've got, I believe one of these is a reverse servo, so it runs to a regular Y harness. You don't have to do any mixing or any of that. So you don't have to worry about having two servos there. You got the vertical stab with the servo already installed there. No digital camo on this because this is only on top of the airplane. And then we've got the hatch here, which has the cockpit detail. You got the clear canopy. You got a little pilot figure in there.
Magnetic, right?
Oh, that's actually got a pin.
Oh, a pin. Okay.
Yeah, so it's, with the jet going as fast as this can go, and if you guys watch the video, you can see the wicked snaps that you can do with this thing. If you had a magnetically attached hatch, it would probably come off. Okay. So we've got a nice, very positive latch mechanism here. And then getting down to the rest of it is the fuselage. And the fuselage has all the good stuff installed. You've got servo for the nose gear steering installed. The nose gear retract is installed. The ducted fan unit is installed. The motor ESC all installed, of course. It's got in this case, this is the Binafly basic version, has the Spectrum AR636 receiver installed. So there's not a lot left to do there. That's it. You've got these 5 major airframe components, and then we've got a little bag here with some screws. Yeah. That's it. Screws and a bind plug.
Awesome.
And that is all it takes to put this thing together. So let's get rid of that foam. And we'll put the plane foam together.
So this, all right.
We're going to show you guys how quickly this thing assembles. Now, I'm not using the instruction manual. I'm just going to put this together, the way that I would kind of inherently put it together. Of course, we include an instruction manual. You should follow that manual anytime that you can for all the quick hints and tips that there might be in there.
So I see the connector on the ESC is EC5,
yeah, let's talk about that. So because this is a relatively high-performance EDF aircraft, it pulls a bit more current than your average sport airplane in this size. So in this case, we have a 70 amp ESC, and we are recommending a 6S battery. You're pulling quite a few watts through it. Now, that said, even during development, our guys didn't have a lot of batteries with 6S batteries with the EC5 connector on it. For example, the E-flite 6S 3200 that we sell does not have an EC5 on it. It has an EC3 on it. They were using that for development. And so we have these adapters that we sell, which is an EC5 device to an EC3 battery adapter. So you can buy this already pre-made. So let's say you have a bunch of 6S batteries in EC3. It will work. It's not as ideal as having an EC5 connector. You might get a little tiny bit less performance having this adapter and or running an EC3 connector instead of an EC5. And the batteries we recommend officially, the Connexus batteries, those have the EC5 installed on them.
Good.
By the way, those 4,000 milliamp batteries that we recommend are just a little bigger than the stock battery space. You might, depending on how you have your wires routed and everything and set up, you might have to remove a little bit of foam from the hatch, maybe from the battery mounting area to fit it.
Yeah.
But, and we haven't always done that, and sometimes the hatch fits just with a little bit of a gap. Not a big deal. Just watch out for that. If you use any 6S 3200 to 3800 battery, it'll probably fit just fine. Awesome. No issues at all. But I know a lot of guys, why not stick a 4000 in there if you can. Awesome. So, again, we're talking about there's not a lot of screws to this thing. All the screws are the same. And so in this case, they're all 1.5 millimeter socket-equipped countersunk stainless steel screws here. And so, for example, we start with effectively the horizontal stab here. We're going to plug in, and everything is marked, which I really, really love. So I know that this goes into elevator. Yep. Yeah. This goes into elevator here, and that's it. Boom, we're already done installing the horizontal stab wiring. And then basically this thing just goes down onto the fuselage there, and then we've got 4 screws that secure the horizontal.
All right. So some people were asking yesterday about, can it take off and land from grass?
Oh, that's right. It sure can. And that's, again, I was talking about the landing gear. Some people have said, oh, I really wish it had nice oleo struts or something, or upgraded landing gear option. You don't need that. In fact, what makes it so well suited for grass operations is the fact that it has the sprung wire gear. You can take that landing gear, you can fly it off of smooth surfaces, no problem, but you can also fly it. If you look at our video, right at the 2-minute mark, you're going to see a grass takeoff and a grass landing. They're kind of split screen, so you might have to watch it and then reverse back and watch it again. But basically, the one nice thing is, oh, actually I did this a little bit out of order. I got to pull these ones out. I forgot. These also hold in the vertical stab. But again, it is capable of grass field operation, in part because of the wire struts, and also because it has so much power. A lot of EDFs that I flew, I've been flying electric aircraft for almost 20 years now, back when electric aircraft were kind of a joke because very few of them flew very well, very few of them had enough power to even get out of grass, and I flew some of the earliest ducted fans. I had a ducted fan back in the early 2000s that ran on NiCad batteries. Wow. It flew for about 1.5 minutes, and it required a very, very significant hand launch, and in fact, a lot of guys bungee launched it. And this airplane, it's amazing. You can just set it down on our grass field and go.
So we have a lot of comments on Facebook, and I'm sure YouTube. Kyle, do we have any questions while we're putting this together? Speed. So
the top speed, we haven't been able to clock it on a calm day yet with the recommended 6S batteries, the 40C battery in particular, which probably puts out a little more power. But we're guessing it's north of 100 miles per hour. Cool. Yeah, definitely in a dive for sure. But we say 3-digit speeds. I mean, obviously in kilometers per hour, it's going to be well over 100 kilometers per hour. So.
And with that speed, I mean, this is not really a park flyer per se, right?
No, absolutely not. I want to point out that it might be sized that people think, oh, that's about the size of a park flyer.
Right, because it looks small, but it's pretty fast. So.
It's really not intended to be flown in a park, So basically, you can see that I've got the horizontal stab mounted now. I'm going to put the vertical on, and then there's 3 screws that then secure. 2 screws go through the vertical into the horizontal, and then 1 screw at the front of the vertical to hold that in. And that's it. That is all it's going to take to finish installing the stabs on this thing.
So no glue required at all?
No glue at all, actually. Yeah. And I have to admit, I've been flying a long time, and I've built airplanes from kits. I've built foam aircraft from back in the day when you had to cut the control surfaces out of them, and you had to install the control horns. And obviously, times have changed significantly. And here we have a high-performance jet that requires a total of, I think it's like 10 screws to put the thing together. Not any glue at all. And one thing that I want to point out, by the way, I've been building foam airplanes for a long time, so my recommendation is to always flex your, this already has the servos and the control horns installed, so be very careful, but before you power it up, just go ahead and flex your hinges to make sure you've got good travel all the way to the kind of, I guess, built-in bevels on the control surface. Right. That way, there's no servos that are going to bind up. You're going to get full control throw. So you can see I'm doing it. I'm just exercising very gently now the elevator halves. I did the rudder already. This is even more important when it comes to the flaps in particular. Right. You want to make sure you've got plenty of travel down so your flaps don't stall out, your flap servos don't bind up and pull a bunch of current when you're trying to land. So that's it. Boom, we got the horizontal tail, the vertical tail installed. It was that simple. Now we're going to install the wing. And the nice thing about the wing is it's got, again, 6 screws here and no gluing. It's all in one piece, which is the beautiful thing. It's a little more difficult to install than the horizontals. I'm going to have you hold that for me. And I'm going to drop the wiring. There's all this wiring here, which is obviously your retract units, your flap servos, aileron servos. All of that has to go down into this hole here. So that way you can route all the wiring to the receiver. But check this out. I mean, it can't get any easier than that. Boom. Now we're going to install the screws. And I think you guys are going to be very impressed at how quickly, and granted I'm talking and I'm maybe not doing this in the most orderly fashion or the most efficient fashion, but basically I think in the marketing materials we say, oh hey, you can have this thing ready to fly in the time it takes to charge the battery. That's true. Pretty much I mean, granted, if you're charging your battery at 6C, all right, okay, you might get your battery charged before you get your airplane done.
And the plug and play comes out of the box just exactly the same way.
Yes.
It's just you need to
install a receiver, which is going to take a little more time because obviously you have to mount the receiver, you're going to have to run all your wiring, you're going to have to plug it all in, you're going to have to secure it all out of the way. So you're going to want to watch out for those things. But basically, in this case, it's so quick to put together in either version that I don't think that's going to keep anybody from buying it. In fact, that's probably for me. When I see an airplane that's this easy to put together, I look a lot harder at it and I say, you know what, that's so convenient. I can have that thing out of the box and in the air the same day that I get it. Within minutes of opening the box, that's phenomenal. And I really think that is hopefully going to be a big attraction point for a lot of people. There's just no reason to not buy this airplane if you're looking for your first EDF or you're looking for a high-performance EDF. While you're holding that, I'm going to go ahead and remember we talked about exercising those hinge lines. So I'm going to take this, again, very carefully. I'm going to kind of massage the hinge line. I'm going to rotate the servo there. Again, the flaps, it's probably the most critical for because you got to make sure you've got all the travel all the way down without binding. So here I'm going to kind of overextend it a little bit so that way it kind of smashes the foam a little bit, so I've got plenty of travel. You can see that's going to be more travel than I'm going to need for the flaps. I'm going to do that on this side as well.
I see all the ball links around.
So all around ball links, digital metal geared servos. Even still, I'm being very careful. I don't want to strip any gears or damage anything, so I'm actually using my finger on the servo arm. And then also using my hand on the control surface itself. So exercised all that out, so boom, I think that's all ready to go. So now the next step is we're going to flip this thing back right side up. And you actually have to plug in all those wires that we just routed through. And again, everything is all marked in there. And that's probably, honestly, this is probably the hardest part of the assembly is the fact that you've got all these wires in here and you have to plug everything in. Now, everything is marked, so that's the one nice thing about it is I would say that it's just a matter of making sure that you can read the little tabs, and most of them are easy to see. So now, for myself personally, a lot of times I'm pretty sticky about, I want to make sure like all my wires are all lined up and routed the same way, and my ailerons all go to one side, and my flaps go to one. That's absolutely not necessary. I'm a little more picky, and I can do that sometimes. But in this case, I'm just going to plug the things in just the way they're intended to be plugged in. So let's do that. Are there any other questions?
So I see a question here about maybe, I think we talked about it already, so using a 6S 5000 battery. It might be a little bit too heavy.
Yeah, you know, a lot of brands vary in size and shape, and so I guess there's a possibility that a 6S 5000 from some brand will work, but it's not typical. In most cases, a 6S 4000 is probably going to max out the battery bay area, and you're gonna get stuck there. And so, yeah, by the way, what you might have noticed is here, there is an extension that goes to the bind port. The
Okay.
receiver's kind of down far in there, and you will not want to have to try and put this bind plug in and out of there. So I just pulled that extension, which isn't marked because it's already plugged in very clearly to the bind plug, and that's where my bind plug is going to go. So I'll just plug that in for now, so that one's out of the way. And then all the other ones again plug into the corresponding female and male connectors. So.
Okay. Another question, Henry. What's the ESC? Is it 70 amp?
70 amp ESC, of course, it's 6S compatible. You've got a switching BEC in there. We've got a total of 8 servos that are factory installed in here, so we've got a BEC that can handle that no problem. So that comes already installed in both the plug-and-play version and in the bind-and-fly version as well, of course.
Awesome. So, Carl, do we have any questions from YouTube? What's the BEC rating on the ESC?
I'm not entirely sure what the amp rating is on it, but obviously whatever it is, it's more than enough because we've flown the heck out of these things. We've flown them very aggressively. You can see in the video we do some wild snaps. We haven't had any issues with the BEC, so I'm guessing it's probably a few amp rated. But I don't know if we published that spec or not, but again, not critical because it works perfectly.
So I don't think we have mentioned the price yet.
Oh, we have not. Yeah, that's a part of the attractive point of it
right.
for me. So the bind-and-fly basic version is $249.99,
right.
and so that version is readily available. You know, again, it's going to be in some stores already this weekend, this coming weekend. There's still, I don't know if now there's any left, but TowerHobbies.com had some left.
Right.
So $250, you get a bind-and-fly high-performance 70mm EDF with a 6S power system, 8 digital metal geared servos. You've got a Spectrum AR636 receiver with AS3X and Safe Select. That is a phenomenal value. $249.99, $250 US, and then we do have the plug-and-play version available for $219.99, so it's $30 less.
Right.
Obviously, if you already have a 636 or another receiver, you can do that, but I think the value is really in having AS3X. This airplane already flies really smooth, the Viper design without AS3X, but when you add AS3X on top of it, it is so smooth, so locked in, it's just it's like another level of better.
Right.
And so I would strongly recommend, even if you already have a receiver, even if you're not a fan of gyros per se, I would still get the bind-and-fly version with the.
And we got to point out that some of the guys that fly, expensive composite jets, they're using a Spectrum AS3000 with the AS3X on it already.
Exactly.
So those guys are using it. Might as well use it on the small airplanes as well.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something to point out. I know there's a lot of guys out there who say, "Hey, I don't want gyros in my airplane. I don't want them impeding my flight experience. I don't want them getting in the way." That's fine. The way gyros are supposed to work and the way we've set ours up to work is they don't. When you move the stick, you're in command. But they still smooth out the response around center in particular. And so, at any rate, even the highest end jet guys, Ali Machinchi, David Payne.
Right.
These guys are flying with gyros in their airplanes.
Right.
They were using for many years different kinds of brands of gyros. Now they're all using the Spectrum AS 3000 setup, which is the same gyro system basically that's in this airplane. And so it works phenomenal. There's no reason to not have gyros in an airplane because it just smooths out the experience and makes a better flying experience overall. So boom, there it is. I think I've got all the wires plugged in. Again, this is the hardest part of the assembly process.
Yeah.
And so now that I've got all that set up, we talked a little bit about the connector. In this case, we've got an EC5 here. Now, I don't actually have a battery with an EC5. I had a battery with an EC3. The reason for that is I wanted to show using that adapter.
Adapters, okay.
So I've got the adapter here, pulling it out of the package. And so basically, I'm going to plug that adapter into the battery. And now my battery effectively has an EC3 connector on it. And so I can now plug this into the connector that's in the airplane. Before I do that, I've got my bind plug installed into my bind port. I've got a DX8E transmitter here. And one thing I want to point out is that this is a 6-channel airplane. So the plug-and-play version, a 6-channel transmitter, no problem. You've got your typical functions, throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder, flaps, and retracts. Those are your 6 channels. However, if you do want to use safe, you need at least a 7-channel receiver. So if you buy the bind-and-fly version, you can fly it with a 6-channel transmitter, no problem. If you have a DX6E, a DX6, an old DX6I maybe, you can use that transmitter to fly this airplane in bind-and-fly form. However, if you want to be able to turn Safe Select on and off,
you need that extra channel.
You have to have 7 channels. That's actually a big part of the reason we came out with the DX8E, because this isn't the only airplane that has this issue. All of our warbirds, 1.2-meter warbirds that have flaps and retracts, same issue arises. So I strongly recommend, if you haven't already upgraded to an 8-channel radio, I'd do that. If you're looking for your first radio, I would really strongly recommend going to an 8-channel instead of a 6-channel. A lot of guys, that was their first real radio. Maybe they bought a Radio to Fly trainer, it came with a DXE, and then they were like, well, I'm ready to upgrade my transmitter, that's fine. But if you do that and you go to a DX6, you might run into some of the limitations like on this model. And down the road, as we add more and more features and things to airplanes, we may have lights, opening cockpits. Who the heck knows what kind of features we might add. So having 8 channels will guarantee you're going to be able to take advantage of all of those.
I got a person asking yesterday about if it doesn't have lights or not. It doesn't have lights.
This one does not have lights. Right. Obviously, it's not intended to be a night flyer. Lights just look cool in general, but they do add some complexity, some weight, and then also will add to the price a bit. So we don't have lights on this. We have lights on a lot of our airplanes. A lot of our really scale airplanes, like the recently released Cherokee, the Cirrus, they look amazing with the lights on them. And then we've got some larger jets that other brands sell that have lights on them. But we don't have lights on there to keep it simple, to keep the cost down, to keep the weight down, to make the performance as good as possible. So
awesome.
I've got a brand new model selected here, my DX80. I've done nothing to it. It's just a model the way it comes. I've got my battery ready to plug in. I've got my bind plug installed. And now I'm going to bind it with Safe Select. And the reason I'm going to do it that way is something that we found in this airplane and a couple of other recently released airplanes is that if you bind with AS3X only, so let's say you bind it normally, you leave your bind plug in, while your receiver's flashing, you turn your transmitter on in the bind mode, boom, then you have a little bit limited travel on your rudder channel.
Okay.
It's just something in the software got mixed up, and basically it gives you limited throw on your rudder channel, and there's no way to get around that yet. We're going to be working on a fix for that down the road here, but in the short term, if you bind it with Safe Select on, you have full rudder travel. You don't have to mechanically adjust it. You're getting all full electronic travel, and then you can turn Safe Select off. So what I'm going to recommend is if you're a pilot and you want full rudder travel, so you can do really cool knife edge, and you don't want Safe Select, no problem. Bind it with Safe Select, assign it to a switch, set it up on a switch, and then take that channel and adjust the travel so the switch does nothing. So basically, if Safe is 100% travel and AS3X is 0% travel, just adjust the other switch position to 0%, boom, done. Now, no matter what you do with that switch, it's always going to be AS3X. Awesome. So we're going to show you that bind process really quick for Safe Select. So basically, I've got everything plugged in or hooked up, and I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. And you're not going to be able to see this, but the receiver now is blinking as in bind mode. But I want to bind with Safe Select active, so I'm going to pull out my bind plug. Now I'm going to turn the transmitter on to bind it. And of course, you can go into the system setup menu and go to bind there. I'm going to try this kind of the old-fashioned way, which is I've got all my switches up, my stick's centered. I'm going to hold down the bind button or the trainer button, the momentary button, and I'm going to turn the radio on. I'm going to step a couple feet away here to make sure that I don't swamp out the receiver and so it binds appropriately. And there it is. It's bound. DSMX, 22MS, telemetry, and we are ready to go. And so now basically it's going to be active.
There you go.
I'm going to have to assign my flaps to a channel. Right now they're probably, they're on this channel and they're the reverse operation. I've got to double check my landing gear. My landing gear should be defaulted to my gear channel. So I'm going to go ahead and put the gear down. And then there are some personal preferences in the orientation and the direction that your switch goes for landing gear. For me personally, I actually prefer switch away from you, which is what a lot of guys fly with. Switch away is gear down, and switch towards you is gear up. So in this case, if I wanted to set it up that way, I would reverse my gear channel. So I'm not going to do that because, again, that's personal preference, and so it's up to you whether or not you do that.
Mine is my backward, because down switch. Recheck is down.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. And again, it's personal preference. Sometimes it's like where you learned how to fly, who you learned to fly with. Yeah, sometimes it wasn't anything at all. You just bought an airplane and it worked that way, and so you're like, oh, okay, I should just make all my airplanes like that.
Right.
And then I have encountered people that have some airplanes set up one way and some airplanes set up another way. You got to watch out for that. Yeah, but at any rate, so we've got that active. We have a switch here. It's already defaulted the flaps to the aux1 channel. Gear is aux5 channel, so whatever you've got assigned there. We've got up elevator, obviously, left and right aileron, left and right rudder. Because it's a Spectrum setup, I don't have to do anything reversing those channels. All the primary functions are going to work just right. You can hear that right now the ESC is arming. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it. I don't necessarily want the ESC armed right now. And so I've got the transmitter on. I'm going to plug it back in. I'm going to raise the trim so the ESC does not arm, and so that way we can talk about a little more of the Safe Select switch setup.
Let's do that.
So now out of the box, and the manual we did miss this in the manual. Sorry about that, guys. It doesn't tell you how to assign a channel and a switch for Safe Select. So I'm going to try and do this from memory if I recall correctly. I'm going to go to my system setup. I'm going to assign a switch to Safe. Now, everybody might have a different switch that they want to use for safe select. I'm going to go ahead and assign it to H here in the back.
Okay.
That's one that I've used for other products in the past. So I'm going to go to my channel assign. I'm going to say that aux2 is going to become this switch because that's my safe select channel.
So a lot of people were actually in the video. They couldn't hear the sound of the fan.
Yeah.
So do you think you can throttle up here?
I probably can. I don't know if it'll be able to, if it'll sound good on the video, but I'm going to tell you guys this, that we're going to do another video where we're just talking about it while we're flying it, and we're going to do a bunch of flybys so you can hear how great this thing sounds. It sounds like a turbine. It doesn't sound like a blow dryer. It sounds like a real jet as opposed to, something that's screaming its brains out and not moving that fast. So, so now I've got, I think my switch is assigned for safe select, and I'm going to move the sticks to the inside corners here, and I'm going to flip this switch back and forth. Supposed to flip it 5 times to activate the safe select. May not have gotten it. I might have to adjust my travels to make sure that I've got. You got to have 100% travel, by the way, on all your sticks in order for that to work. So I'm just going to make sure that I have that set up.
So since we're putting it together, do you think I can fly later?
The only downside is raining.
Oh, it's raining right now.
It's raining right now, but I guess you could.
Yeah, maybe.
In essence, you could. So, real quick, before we go too much further, do we have any other questions?
Kyle? I don't see anything on Facebook right now.
Is there any way to activate safe select using a DX6E?
So a DX6E, what you can do is you can assign basically safe to either your flaps or your retract channel. So you wouldn't have independent operation, and so that is an option. In fact, you know what, I'll tell you what, we're going to do a video that shows that. We'll do a separate video to show you guys how to assign the switch on an 80, for example, and also then on a 6E what happens. The one catch is if you assign it to your flap channel or your gear channel, it's only going to work one way or the other. It might be the opposite of what you want. I actually don't know on this airplane if it's an option. What it would be in a perfect world for me with a 6-channel radio is I would have, when I put my gear down, safe on. So when I'm geared down, when I'm getting ready to take off, I've got safe on, or when I'm coming in for a landing, I got safe on. I'm not entirely sure that this one works out that way. It depends on some different setup options. We'll have to do that. We'll do a separate video on that. So why don't we do a separate video on assigning the switch on a DX80 for safe select, and then also talking about if you're a kind of guy who wants to have that full rudder travel, but you don't want safe select active, no problem. We'll show you how to bind with safe select. We'll show you how to set it onto a switch, and then we'll show you how to adjust the travel on that switch so you only have AS3X active.
Awesome.
And then we'll also show you a DX6E, for example, if we are able to successfully get the safe assigned to the gear channel in particular, working the right way, or the flap channel. You could also do it on the flaps. I probably wouldn't recommend it myself. So you could go into your radio setup, and obviously you can slow down your flaps. You can add mixing for elevator. Right now we have some of that in there. I have to adjust it. You can see the elevator's up, probably because of that. I'm not going to go into all the radio setup right now, but I wanted to show you guys how easy it is to get the thing put together, get it on its wheels, and then get it set up basically so you're ready to your kind of final radio tuning. Yeah.
Part number for that adapter for the battery.
The question is the part number for the adapter.
So we've got 2 versions of it. We've got one under the E-flite brand and one under the Dynamite brand. In this case, this is the Dynamite one that we used, which is DYNC0030. So again, this is the part number for the EC5 device to EC3 battery adapter, and that is DYNC0030. So you get that. It's like $5, I think, something like that. And again, it's available from E-flite. A lot of stores will have this in stock. If they don't, you can get it on horizonhobby.com, towerhobbies.com. If your store doesn't stock these, they probably should, because I wouldn't be surprised if we start to come out with more and more airplanes, especially ducted fans, that have the EC5 connector. And again, you don't have to have an EC5 connector on your battery to use it. If you already have a battery with an EC3, it will work with the adapter. It's not ideal. You might have a little more resistance, a little less performance, but it should work in most cases still.
For
those guys that don't have a 6S battery, can they put 2 and 3S together?
Oh, you can actually. We're not showing that here, but you can install 2 3-cell batteries in series, and run them. So there are a lot of guys who have 3-cell 3200s, for example.
Very popular.
And so if you say, hey, I really want this airplane, it's $250, but I don't want to spend $80 or $100 on another 6S battery that I might not use in other airplanes, no problem. Buy some more 3-cell packs or use the 3-cell batteries you have, and we have Y harnesses that are pre-made, which are series Y harnesses. So you can connect 2 batteries in series. Now, if you have 2 3-cells with EC3s, you'd have to buy the EC3 series adapter. Then you'd have to also have the adapter that goes from EC3 to EC5. That's a lot of wiring. Again, not ideal, but it will work. It will work. It'll save you some money. It'll allow you to kind of optimize the use of those batteries and other products. And then real quick, I'll show everybody what it looks like, the finished product here. And by the way, so you can see I'm installing the hatch, and you can see that it's got a latch back here. And so it's got a very, very positive latching connection that is going to keep the hatch very secure, which is really, really exciting because you obviously want to make sure that, I got to move this battery back a little bit. It's got a nice positive, you kind of heard that snap. You can see that I can tug on this thing, and it moves a little bit, but it's not going to pop off of there. And then obviously to remove it, you open the hatch by pulling the latch back. So, some guys, they just always pop this thing down on. That's okay too. Sometimes what I do to relieve some stress on that pin is I put the hatch down and then I let the pin engage that way. So there's all kinds of ways you can do that. But basically that's it, guys. The finished product here, which I think looks amazing. Again, looks are very subjective, but I still feel like this is a really cool trim scheme on this airplane. We've had a lot of guys say, wow, that thing looks really hot. And I really think it does. And so, again, we're going to do some videos on the safe setup and safe select setup and explain, again, some of the options that we may or may not have with the DX60. We're going to have to investigate that. Again, if you have a DX8, DX8E, DX9, IX12, DX18, DX20, DX18 tray radio, whatever you might have, you're going to have plenty of channels if you're beyond 6 to assign all that. And so,
do we have any other questions? Flip it over.
Okay.
Let's flip it over.
So here's the top, as you guys can see. Nice, bright, pretty white trim scheme overall with some stripes. And then check out the contrast on the bottom. Digital camo. Really sweet looking. Looks great. You can see the difference in the air, and I know I can retract the gear there for you. Nice electric retracts. Super simple, super reliable. Again, this one just brand new out of stock. Everything works perfectly just as you expect it to.
Any other questions, comments? We're good to go. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching today, and yeah, happy landings.